Welcome back to Everything Practical. My name is Anthony, and today I'm going to be looking at a knife sharpening kit. This particular kit is by Lansky Sharpeners. I've had this kit now for a few years and I've really enjoyed using it. So, naturally, I thought I would share it with you guys. This video will be a review, how-to, and tips and tricks for this sharpening toolkit, and at the end I'll give you my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's go do the demo and go sharpen some knives. Now first off, let's have a look at what comes in the box. It comes with this plastic case, which is good enough to hold all of the pieces that you have in here and easily transport or store if you need to do so. What it doesn't come with is this little stand, but I recommend that you get this stand. It's an extra 10 or 15 bucks, but very useful as you'll see later on with the demonstration. So what comes in the box is some cutting oil, the knife holder and angle stand, these rods that fit into the grinding stones, and then your grinding stones themselves. This kit is with 5 and it comes with an extra coarse stone that has a 70 grit. It comes with a coarse stone that is 180 grit. Has a medium stone that's 260 grit. It has a fine stone that's 600 grit. And finally, an ultra fine stone that is 1000 grit. Now normally it's pretty easy to tell if your knife is sharp enough for your use or if it's getting time to need to sharpen it. One easy way is to take a piece of paper and test if your knife can cut the paper. Now I don't just mean here on the table back and forth. To test this, you take the paper in hand and then you run the knife along the edge. And if it can cut it easily, then your knife is sharp enough. You can test it at different spots along the paper. As you can see, this is going to be one we're sharpening today and it doesn't cut. This is a knife that I sharpened just the other day with this knife kit. And you can see that when I run this along the edge, it cuts it nice and smoothly. And this is how you know your knife is sharp. Again, if you can run your knife across a piece of paper like this, it is sharp enough for most uses that you'll need. So again, let's take this knife, show you that it's not cutting this paper, or it's getting caught, or just pulling it. This is a tear, so it didn't cut through. It's just not sharp at all. So now that I know my knife is nice and dull, I am going to show you how to use this kit. First we want to take this clamp, and it has 2 screws on it, one on the back, one on the front. You want to loosen this one on the front so that it has enough wiggle room to open this clamp part. The one on the back I'll show you a bit later, but it's for clamping down a little bit tighter once you do have the knife clamped in. So you take the knife that you want, you put it in between these rubber pads. You can hold it with your finger, and then you'll want to tighten it with this top screw. And if it slides, of course, put it back in a nice position and then tighten it. Now you might be able to wiggle it a little bit like so. This knife is still wiggling around. So you take this back screw and you tighten it a little bit more, and this brings this arm or clamp a little bit tighter on the knife. So now we're nice and sturdy. You can use this sharpener without the stand, but then you just have to hold it and use the sharpener by itself. This is why I like to use the stand, or have bought the stand to use. And you can just set this right on top of the stand like this, and then we'll prepare the stones. Now based on the sharpness of this knife, I don't think I'll need to do a full edge refinement that I would normally do with the extra coarse stone. It's in decent shape, so when I have a knife that's in decent shape, I like to use my medium stone. Now if there's some chips taken out of the blade, I would definitely start with the coarser stone to reshape the entire blade. But I don't need to do that, so I'll start with the medium stone. Now to set this up, you take your stone and then you take the hook facing down and you put it in like so. Now you want to put it in to where there's a little bit of space left, and I'll show you why in a moment. Then you tighten it up with this screw so it doesn't slide around. Now a quick trick before you get started is to go ahead and put your rods on all of these. So once you start doing your grinding, you can easily switch from one to the other without having to take a pause and prepare your next grinding stone. So next you need to decide which angle you want to use to sharpen your knife. This stand allows you to do 30 degrees, 25 degrees, 20 degrees, and 17 degrees. For kitchen knives, I like to use 20 or 25 degrees, so up to you which one to choose. Then you just take this rod and you slide it in to the angle that you want to use. Next, you want to check is when this stone is on your knife, that you're not going to be touching the knife holder or hitting any part of this rod or the stone on this first screw. So you can do a quick little practice run to see if you're going to hit anything from any angle. It looks like I'm going to be fine, so that's nice. If you're hitting it with the stone, you can either try to move the knife further out of the grips, or you can adjust the rod to give you a little bit more height on the stone itself. So now we're almost ready to go. All we need to do now is use a little bit of cutting oil. This is Lansky's honing oil, and I like to put it on the stone, but you can also put it directly on the knife. Now to sharpen, you grab the stand, or if you don't have the stand, you hold this just with your hand, but since I have the stand, I hold it like this, and it wobbles a little bit, so that's why I like to have a firm grip on it. And then you use the stone and you push gently against the blade in about a 45-degree angle, and you work your way along the edge of the knife. Now what you want to do also is go back the opposite direction, creating a nice hatch across the blade. And I like to do this a few times before I switch to the other side. Now, once you've done one side a few times, you take this, you just easily flip it over, back on the other side, and then you repeat doing the exact same thing. Now the reason you do this on both sides of the blade is because you want a nice even angle on both sides. You also do this on both sides because once you do it on one side, you actually move the metal to the other side, which kind of looks like a hook on the metal. It's very small, you can't see it in pictures or the video that I have going right now, but this is what happens, and it's called a burr. So you want to move this burr from one side back to the other, and with the finer stones, you're also making smaller scratches on the knife, which end up being very fine and very sharp in the end. Now this takes a little bit of practice, so don't get frustrated if you're not able to do this easily the first time, but you'll get better at it, don't you worry. So now that I've gone over it a few times, I'll do a little quick inspection of the blade, and it looks pretty good to me. And then I'm ready to move on to my next finer stone. So this is the medium stone, the 280 grit, and next I'll move to my fine stone, which is 600 grit. And I'll repeat the same exact process, starting first on this side and then using my fine stone on the other side. I'm gonna go and work my way down to the ultra fine, and I'll be right back. So I'm pretty satisfied with this for now. Let's see how sharp we've gotten it. To undo it, you just loosen these screws a little bit. Maybe start with the back one because we have a nice good clamp on it, and we can go ahead and slide this out. I'm going to clean this blade real fast because there's still oil. You see this dark bit on the blade. This is actually metal that's been taken off of the blade. So I'm going to clean this up. Be right back. I'm just use a knife. Just use a paper towel to clean this off. Now you can see that it's a little bit cleaner, and you can see a bit that it's a bit shinier from the sharpening. Now I'll take this same piece of paper that I had before and give it a test, and look at that, cut right through the first time. Now this isn't perfect, but for the sake of this video, I'm happy enough. Now I could have of course worked this knife a little bit more, but with this sharpness, I'm perfectly happy with leaving the blade like this. This cuts very nicely, and as you saw before, it wasn't cutting at all. So I'm happy with this. So a couple things you should be aware of if you do end up getting this sharpening kit. Now first, I do recommend that you get this stand to go with this other piece for your sharpening. This stand makes it quite a bit easier to control the setup and use the sharpener, and without it, I find it pretty difficult just to do the sharpening with this one holder. So if you get the sharpener, be sure you get the stand. It's an extra 10 or 15 bucks, but plenty worth it. Second, just know that sharpening isn't going to come extremely easy. You do need to practice a little bit before it becomes very easy and natural to do the sharpening with this kit. Now do keep in mind that any knife sharpening is going to take some practice. You're not just going to walk up to a sharpener and boom, whip out your knife and start sharpening it right away perfect the first time. So if you get this kit, be a little patient at first, but believe me, it is very nice to have if you just want to sharpen your knife quickly. And lastly, remember, you don't need to use all 5 stones to sharpen your knife each time. If you just need to clean up the edge really quick, you can start with the middle or fine grade stone and then work to your finer stones. You don't need to start with the big roughing stone at first. It's very nice that this kit comes with 5 different stones that you can use to gently start shaping your blade. So that wraps it up. I do like this sharpening kit a lot. I found it much more practical and useful than just your normal wand that you have for sharpening your knives, or there's sometimes very cheap sharpeners that have a V shape to them where you run your knife through the sharpener itself. That I find a little cringing to use, but also my experience is the blade hasn't been really refined to what it needs to be for normal use. And with this sharpening kit, you'll be able to create a nice edge for your knife and use your knife for an extended period of time with normal use, of course, without having to resharpen the knife. So I think it's pretty obvious by now that I do think this knife sharpener is practical. I would recommend it to you guys. So if you can find it for a nice decent price, 35 to 40 bucks with the stand, which is an extra 10 or 15, so a total price of around 50, 55, I think it is worth that money. There are other knife sharpening kits out there. Just make sure that whatever kit you do get has all the stones that you need to do the sharpening that you'll want to do at home. So if you don't think you'll need to do roughing of the knife edge, then maybe a kit with only 3 or 4 stones will do. But I found that if your knife edge chips, then a roughing stone is very, very helpful. But if you're just going to polish up your edges every now and then to get that nice sharp edge, then a few stones will do the job just fine as well. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions about this sharpening device or any other sharpening devices I might be able to help you out with. If you enjoy this content and want to see more practical videos like this one, be sure you do subscribe to the channel, and if you want to receive notifications, click the bell icon as well. As always, stay practical, and I'll see you in the next one.